Hey guys, tonight we begin with a curious little journey, one that takes us not to the grand courts of kings or the clash of knights on the battlefield, but to a far stranger place. The dimly lit, herb-scented hut of a medieval doctor. Picture this. You're in an age where the cure for a headache might involve a prayer to the moon, a sprinkle of ground bone, or, God help you, a quick jab with a lancet to let out the bad blood. The irony is rich, isn't it? These doctors, revered as wise healers, often wielded remedies that were as likely to kill as to cure, yet people flocked to them, clinging to hope in a world where a cold could be a death sentence. It's a forgotten corner of history, weird and wonderful in its absurdity, and tonight we'll walk through it together, step by soothing step. If this tale of medieval oddities lulls you into a cozy trance, maybe give a like or subscribe, but only if you enjoy this kind of thing. No rush, no pressure. Dim the lights, pull up a blanket, maybe turn on a fan for that soft humming white noise. Let's slip back to the year 1340, where you're about to be treated by a medieval doctor. It's going to be strange, a little funny, and oddly comforting. Ready? Let's begin. You wake up in medieval Europe, in a small village nestled somewhere in the rolling hills of England, or perhaps the misty valleys of France. It's 1340, and the world feels both familiar and alien. Your bed is a straw-stuffed mattress, lumpy and prickly, with a faint smell of hay and something vaguely earthy. It's not the plush memory foam of your dreams, but there's a simplicity to it that's almost soothing. You shift, and the straw crunches beneath you, a reminder of how close you are to the earth in this time. Outside, a rooster crows, though the sky is still bruised with the purple of dawn. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of wood smoke and damp grass, and the village is just beginning to stir. You're not feeling well today. Maybe it's a persistent cough that rattles your chest, or perhaps your stomach churns like it's staging a quiet revolt. Your head throbs, or your joints ache. Nothing dire, but enough to make you uneasy. In this age, even a minor ailment feels ominous, like a whisper of something worse. You know you need help, and in this village, that means one thing: a visit to the doctor. You pull on a rough woolen tunic, the kind that scratches your skin but keeps you warm, and lace up a pair of leather shoes that feel more like socks with ambitions. Stepping outside, you're greeted by a world that's both vibrant and raw. The village is small, a huddle of timber-framed houses with thatched roofs, their walls leaning slightly as if tired from standing for so long. Smoke curls from chimneys, and the air carries the faint clatter of daily life. A baker kneading dough, a blacksmith hammering at his forge, a woman calling to her children as they chase a stray goose. The path beneath your feet is muddy, churned by cartwheels and livestock, and you pick your way carefully toward the edge of the village. There, at the end of a winding lane, stands a small, crooked hut. A wooden sign swings above the door, painted with a mortar and pestle, though the paint is peeling and the mortar looks more like a lopsided bowl. This is the doctor's domain. You pause at the threshold, a flicker of doubt in your mind. You know deep down that medieval medicine is a gamble, a roll of the dice where the stakes are your health and the dice are carved from superstition and half-baked theories. But you're here now, and there's no hospital, no pharmacy, no WebMD to consult. With a deep breath you knock, and a voice, gravelly but warm, calls out, come in, don't dawdle. The stars won't wait for your ailments." The door creaks open, and you step into a world that feels like it's been plucked from a fairy tale. The air inside is thick with the scent of dried herbs, rosemary, thyme, and something sharper, like crushed nettles. There's a faint metallic tang too, and a whiff of old wine that lingers like an afterthought. The room is dim, lit by a single tallow candle that sputters on a wooden table, casting flickering shadows across the walls. Shelves line the hut, cluttered with jars of powders, roots that twist like gnarled fingers, and small vials of murky liquids. A skull, human or animal you can't tell, sits on a shelf, grinning at you as if it knows something you don't. Bundles of herbs hang from the ceiling, swaying slightly as if stirred by an unseen breeze. In the centre of it all stands the doctor, a wiry figure in a long robe that's patched and faded, with sleeves that hang loose like the wings of a tired bird. His beard is patchy, more enthusiasm than substance, and his eyes are sharp but kind, glinting with a mix of curiosity and confidence. He's holding a book, a heavy tome bound in leather, its pages yellowed and curling at the edges. It looks like it could crush a small animal, but he handles it with reverence, as if it holds the secrets of the universe. "Welcome, my friend," he says, peering at you over a pair of spectacles that are more decorative than functional. Glass lenses are still a rarity, and these are little more than polished crystal. What ails you? A flux of the humours? A touch of melancholy? Or, God forbid, have you angered the planets? You try to describe your symptoms, maybe that cough or the ache in your bones. But he waves a hand, cutting you off with a smile. "No need for details," he says, his voice calm and measured, like a parent soothing a fretful child. The body is a simple thing, ruled by 4 humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Too much of one, too little of another, and you're out of balance. Lucky for you, I'm a master of balance. There's a twinkle in his eye, and you can't help but wonder if he believes his own words, or if he's just playing the part. Either way, his confidence is oddly reassuring, like a lullaby sung by someone who doesn't know the tune, but sings it anyway. He sets the book down with a thud and pulls out a chart, a parchment covered in intricate drawings of stars, planets, and strange symbols that look like they belong in a wizard's grimoire. "Let's see," he mutters, tracing a finger across the lines. "Mars is in a foul mood today, and Venus is sulking in retrograde. That explains your affliction. We'll need to act quickly." You raise an eyebrow, but he's already bustling about, pulling jars from shelves and muttering to himself about the virtues of sage and the dangers of an unbalanced moon. There's a certain charm to his chaos, a sense that he's navigating a world of mysteries with nothing but a handful of herbs and a lot of nerve. Chapter 3. The Diagnosis. Humours and Stars. The doctor sits you down on a wooden stool that creaks under your weight, its legs wobbling like they're considering retirement. He begins his examination, and you quickly realise it's unlike any doctor's visit you've ever imagined. First, he studies your face, tilting his head as if he's reading a particularly tricky poem. "Your eyes," he says, "they're a bit too bright. Too much blood, perhaps, or a surplus of yellow bile." He takes your wrist, not to check your pulse, but to feel for what he calls the rhythm of your humours. His fingers are cold, and you flinch, but he doesn't seem to notice, lost in his own thoughts. Next, he pulls out a small vial and asks you to spit into it. You hesitate, but his earnest expression convinces you to comply. He holds the vial up to the candlelight, squinting as if it's a crystal ball. He says, swirling it like a sommelier inspecting a fine wine. Cloudy, with a touch of green. Definitely a phlegmatic imbalance. You're not sure what that means, but you nod, caught up in the rhythm of his performance. He sets the vial down and returns to his chart, muttering about the alignment of Jupiter and the influence of Saturn on your spleen. The theory of the 4 humours, he explains, is the cornerstone of his practice. Everything in the body comes down to balance, he says, his voice slow and deliberate, like he's reciting a bedtime story. Blood makes you warm and cheerful, but too much, and you're feverish. Phlegm keeps you calm, but an excess brings sluggishness. Yellow bile fuels your ambition, but too much, and you're angry. Black bile, well, that's the tricky one. Too much black bile, and you're melancholic, seeing spirits in the shadows. He pauses, stroking his beard. Your problem, I think, is an excess of black bile, stirred up by Mars's ill temper. We'll need to purge it. You're not entirely convinced by his logic, but there's something soothing about his certainty. In a world where disease can strike without warning, cough might herald the plague. His confidence is a lifeline, however shaky. You nod, letting him guide you through this strange ritual of medieval medicine. He continues his examination, now asking you to stick out your tongue. You comply, and he leans in close, his breath smelling faintly of mint and something earthier. A bit coated, he murmurs, but not too yellow. Good. The bile isn't too rebellious. He steps back, satisfied, and begins flipping through his heavy tome, its pages crackling like dry leaves. The book, he tells you, is a translation of Galen, the great physician of ancient Rome, mixed with a dash of Arabic wisdom from Avicenna and a sprinkle of local folklore. It's a patchwork of knowledge, stitched together with faith and guesswork. Galen says the body is a microcosm of the universe, he explains, his voice soft and rhythmic, like a storyteller lulling you to sleep. Just as the stars govern the heavens, the humours govern you. When Mars is ascendant, like today, it stirs the blood and bile, causing all sorts of mischief. He taps the chart again, pointing to a drawing of a crab-like symbol. Cancer is lurking nearby too, which suggests a watery imbalance. We'll need to dry you out. You're not sure whether to laugh or nod solemnly, but his earnestness keeps you anchored. He moves to a small table cluttered with tools, crude iron lancets, a bowl of wriggling leeches, and a mortar filled with crushed herbs. First we'll check your urine, he says, producing a glass flask that looks suspiciously like it was repurposed from a wine jug. He hands it to you with a cloth and gestures toward a corner of the hut where a tattered curtain offers the barest illusion of privacy. Fill this, if you please. The urine is a window to the soul, or at least to the kidneys. You comply, feeling a mix of embarrassment and amusement, and return with the flask. He holds it up to the candlelight, swirling it gently, his face a mask of concentration. Clear, but with a hint of yellow, he says, as if describing a fine vintage. Not too sweet-smelling, which is good, no diabetes mellitus. But there's a touch of heat here, a sign of choleric imbalance. He sets the flask down and scribbles a note in a ledger, his quill scratching softly against the parchment. The sound is oddly soothing, like rain tapping on a window. Now, he says, we must consult the stars one last time. He pulls out an astrolabe, a brass instrument that looks like a cross between a compass and a sundial. He adjusts its dials, muttering calculations under his breath, and you can't help but admire the craftsmanship, even if its purpose is dubious. The moon is waning, he concludes, which means your treatment must be gentle. No heavy purges today, only a light bleeding and a tonic to soothe the humours. You're not sure whether to feel relieved or alarmed, but his calm demeanour keeps you grounded, like a ship tethered in a storm. The doctor gestures for you to sit again, this time on a low bench near the table. He selects a lancet, its blade glinting faintly in the candlelight, and wipes it with a cloth dipped in wine. Hygiene, you realise, is more of a suggestion than a rule in this time. The tools are cleaned but not sterile, and the idea of germs is as foreign as a distant star. You swallow hard, but the doctor's voice is steady, almost hypnotic. Bloodletting is the key to balance, he says, rolling up your sleeve. Too much blood makes you feverish, reckless, even lustful. Will drain just enough to cool your spirit. He ties a strip of cloth around your arm, tight enough to make your veins bulge, and you feel a faint throb under your skin. This won't hurt much, he says, his grin more mischievous than reassuring. You brace yourself as he makes a small incision and a warm trickle of blood flows into a pewter bowl at your side. It's oddly mesmerizing, the way the dark liquid pools, catching the flicker of the candle. You feel a slight lightheadedness, but it's not unpleasant, just a gentle drift, like floating on a quiet river. He watches the blood with the intensity of an artist studying a canvas. Good, good, he murmurs. The bad humours are leaving. You'll feel lighter soon. You're not sure if it's the blood loss or his soothing tone, but you do feel a strange calm settling over you. The world seems to slow, the edge is softening, and you wonder if this is what it feels like to be balanced. He bandages your arm with a clean strip of linen, tying it with a practiced knot, and you're surprised by how gentle his hands are, despite their calluses. Next, he turns to his shelves, selecting a handful of herbs with the care of a chef choosing spices. A tonic to calm the bile, he says, grinding dried chamomile, mint, and something he calls wormwood in his mortar. The pestle scrapes rhythmically, a soft, steady sound that blends with the crackle of the fire in the corner. He adds a pinch of powder from a jar labelled Dragon's Tooth, and you raise an eyebrow. Not real dragon, he says with a wink, just a root with a fierce name, makes the patient believe it's powerful. You can't help but smile at his candour, a rare crack in his scholarly facade. He mixes the herbs with water from a clay jug, stirring until the liquid turns a murky green. It smells like a forest after rain, with a hint of something bitter and sharp. Drink this, he says, handing you a chipped cup. It'll cool your blood and settle your spirit. You take a sip, and it's as unpleasant as you expected. Bitter, earthy, with a tang that lingers like regret. You grimace, and he chuckles softly. Health tastes terrible, my friend. That's how you know it's working. You force down the rest, and he nods approvingly, like a teacher praising a student. As you sit, letting the tonic settle in your stomach, the doctor leans back in his chair, folding his hands across his robe. While we wait for the humours to align, he says, let me tell you a story. His voice is low, almost a whisper, and you feel yourself sinking deeper into the bench, the world outside fading away. He tells you of a patient he treated last year, a miller who swore his fever was caused by a curse from a rival. I bled him twice and gave him a poultice of nettles, the doctor says, but the real cure was convincing him the curse was lifted. Belief, you see, is half the medicine. He speaks of the great physicians of the past, Hippocrates, who swore by the power of nature, Galen, who mapped the body like a philosopher maps the soul, and Avicenna, whose words crossed deserts to reach this muddy village. But he also speaks of local remedies passed down by village-wise women and monks. The old women know things we scholars forget, he admits, a rare humility in his tone. They say a sprig of lavender under your pillow keeps the demons away. I don't believe in demons, mind you, but I've seen lavender calm a restless mind. His stories weave a tapestry of fact and fancy, blending the learned with the ludicrous. He tells you of a remedy for toothache that involves chanting a prayer to Saint Apollonia while rubbing your jaw with a rabbit's foot. He speaks of a man who swallowed a live spider to cure a cough, and another who wore a necklace of garlic to ward off the plague. Some of it works, he says, shrugging. Some of it doesn't. But people need hope, and I give it to them, wrapped in herbs and prayers. You listen, entranced by the rhythm of his words, the soft crackle of the fire, the faint drip of water from a leak in the roof. The hut feels like a cocoon, shielding you from the harshness of the medieval world. You realize that this doctor, for all his quirks, is a storyteller as much as a healer, spinning tales to soothe the mind as much as the body. His belief in his methods, however flawed, is a kind of magic, and you feel yourself drifting, carried by the current of his voice. The doctor claps his hands, startling you out of your reverie. "Time for the next step," he says, reaching for a small clay jar. He lifts the lid, revealing a wriggling mass of leeches, their glossy bodies glinting in the candlelight. You recoil instinctively, but he laughs, a gentle, reassuring sound. "They're not as bad as they look," he says. "Leeches are nature's surgeons, drawing out the poison with precision." He selects 3, holding them up like prized jewels, and places them on your arm, just below the bandage from the bloodletting. The sensation is strange, cool, wet, and slightly ticklish. You watch as the leeches latch on, their tiny mouths working with a quiet determination. "They'll take just enough," the doctor says, his voice a soothing hum. "Not too much, not too little. Balance, always balance." You're not convinced, but there's something hypnotic about the process, the way the leeches move, the way the doctor watches them with a mix of pride and fascination. It's a ritual, you realise, as much about ceremony as cure. While the leeches do their work, he hands you a small charm, a piece of bone carved with a cross, strung on a leather cord. "Wear this," he says. "It's blessed by the village priest. It'll keep the ill humours at bay." You slip it around your neck, feeling the weight of it against your chest. It's a placebo, you know, but in this moment it feels like a talisman, a small anchor in a world of uncertainty. The doctor smiles, satisfied, and begins cleaning his tools, humming a tune that sounds vaguely like a hymn. The leeches are removed, leaving small red marks on your skin, and the doctor declares the treatment complete. "You're on the mend," he says, though you're not sure if you feel any different. "Rest is your best medicine now. Lie down, avoid ill vapours, and say a prayer to St. Luke, the patron of physicians. He'll guide your humours back to harmony." He hands you a small pouch of dried herbs, chamomile and lavender, he says, to brew into a tea before bed. "Drink this nightly," he instructs, "and keep your window closed against the night air. It's full of miasmas." You thank him, slipping a few coins into his hand, copper pennies, worn smooth by years of trade. He tucks them into his robe, his expression warm but professional. "Come back if the symptoms return," he says, "or if Mars grows angrier." You nod, stepping out into the evening air, the village now cloaked in twilight. The sky is a deep indigo, speckled with stars, and you can't help but wonder if the doctor is right, if those distant lights really do hold sway over your body. You make your way back through the village, the muddy path now cool under your feet. The houses are quiet, their windows glowing with the soft light of candles and hearths. A dog barks in the distance, and the faint sound of a lute drifts from the tavern, mingling with the chirping of crickets. Your arm aches faintly from the bloodletting and leeches, and your stomach still feels unsettled from the tonic, but there's a strange peace settling over you. The doctor's methods were bizarre, his theories a mix of brilliance and nonsense, but his care was genuine. In a world where death lurks in every shadow, that care feels like a small miracle. You think about the irony of it all, how a man armed with little more than herbs, leeches, and a star chart could inspire such trust. His remedies might not work in the way he thinks, but they work in other ways, soothing the mind, giving shape to the chaos of illness. You wonder how many of his patients recover not because of his treatments, but because of his stories, his confidence, his ability to make them believe they'll be okay. It's a kind of magic, you realise, older and deeper than science. Back in your hut, you lie down on your straw mattress, the familiar crunch of straw a comforting sound now. You light a candle, its flame flickering like a tiny heartbeat, and brew the doctor's herbal tea. The scent of chamomile and lavender fills the air, soft and calming, and you sip the tea slowly, letting its warmth spread through you. The village is silent now, save for the distant hoot of an owl and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. You pull the blanket up to your chin, the bone charm resting against your chest, and close your eyes. You think of the doctor, back in his hut, scribbling notes by candlelight, surrounded by his jars and books. You imagine him adjusting his astrolabe, muttering about the stars, convinced he's wrestled another soul from the grip of illness. His world is one of mystery and ritual, where every ailment has a story, every cure a prayer. It's flawed, yes, but it's human, a testament to the stubborn will to survive. As you drift towards sleep, the boundaries between past and present blur. You see the doctor's face, his kind eyes, his patchy beard, and you hear his voice, soft and steady, telling you to rest, to trust, to let the humours find their way. The candle flickers one last time, and the world fades into darkness, carrying you into a dream where stars align, herbs whisper secrets, and a medieval doctor watches over you, balancing the universe one patient at a time. You wake up in medieval Europe, specifically in a drafty corner of a castle's servant dormitory. The straw beneath you crunches, a reminder that mattress is more aspiration than reality. It's barely dawn, and the air smells of damp stone, stale bread, and the faint whiff of last night's chamber pots. Somewhere nearby, a rooster crows with the enthusiasm of someone who doesn't have to scrub floors today. You're a castle servant. Let's call you Edith, or Edward if you prefer. Your job is everything and nothing. You're the oil that keeps this creaky machine of a castle running, yet nobody notices unless you spill something. The irony? This castle, a fortress of power, would collapse without you and your fellow unsung heroes. The Lord might wear velvet, but you're the one making sure his dinner isn't cold. You pull on your tunic, a scratchy wool affair that's seen better days. Shoes? More like leather wraps, optimistically called footwear. The floor is cold, so you move quickly, your breath puffing in the chilly air. Outside, the castle courtyard is stirring. A goose waddles by, giving you a look of someone who knows they're untouchable. Geese, you've learned, are medieval VIPs, more valuable than you, frankly, because they lay eggs. Your first task is to fetch water from the well. The bucket's heavy, the rope's frayed, and the well's crank squeaks like it's auditioning for a ghost story. As you haul up the water, you notice the castle's awake now. Smoke curls from the kitchen chimney, and somewhere a blacksmith's hammer clangs. You wonder if you'll get a moment to eat today. History doesn't record the answer, but you're not holding your breath. You wake up in medieval Europe, your straw pallet crackling beneath you like a chorus of complaints. The dormitory's air is thick with the scent of damp wool and yesterday's stew, a reminder that luxury is for those upstairs. It's not yet dawn, but the faint glow of a lantern flickers through the room's single window, casting shadows that dance like uninvited guests. You're a castle servant, Edith, or Edward if you'd rather, caught in the quiet machinery of a 14th century English fortress. Your role is both vital and invisible, like the mortar holding these stones together. Your tunic is coarse, its hem frayed from months of brushing against floors and hearths. You tug it on, wincing as the wool scratches your skin, and slip into your leather foot wraps, which are less shoes and more a suggestion of protection. The floor's icy, so you move fast, stepping over sleeping bodies. Other servants, their breath soft in the pre-dawn chill. A rooster crows outside, its enthusiasm almost offensive. You envy its freedom to make noise without consequence. Your first task is the well, a beast of a thing in the courtyard. The bucket's heavier than it looks, the rope's rough enough to splinter your palms, and the crank squeaks with every turn, a sound that could wake the dead, or at least annoy the cook. As you haul up water, the castle stirs. A dog barks, a shutter bangs, and that goose waddles by again, eyeing you with the smugness of a creature that knows it's worth more than your wages. You fill the bucket, splashing your feet, and carry it toward the kitchen, the weight pulling at your shoulders. You wonder if anyone's ever drowned in this well, just to escape the day ahead. Probably not, but it's a tempting thought. The courtyard's alive now, with stable boys leading horses and a milkmaid arguing with a cow. You pause, catching your breath, and notice the sky turning pink, a fleeting beauty before the day's grind begins. You're part of this castle's pulse, unnoticed but essential, and there's a quiet pride in that, even if it's buried under sore muscles and damp shoes. You carry the water to the kitchen, a cavernous room where chaos wears a thin mask of order. The head cook, Agnes, is already shouting about the Lord's breakfast. "Pottage again," she barks, stirring a cauldron that looks like it could double as a siege weapon. Pottage, you've learned, is the medieval answer to "what's for dinner?" A mush of grains, vegetables, and whatever's not actively running away. Your job is to chop onions. The knife's dull, the onions are pungent, and soon you're crying like you've just heard a lute play a particularly sad ballad. Agnes, unimpressed, mutters about soft-hearted youngsters. You're tempted to point out that onions don't care about your feelings, but you hold your tongue. Agnes is scarier than the Lord's hunting dogs. The kitchen's a symphony of small disasters. A scullion boy drops a loaf, a cat steals a scrap of bacon, and someone's arguing about whether the ale's gone sour. You notice the irony. This castle's feasts are legendary, yet the people cooking them survive on bread crusts and hope. You sneak a bite of carrot, sweet, earthy, a tiny rebellion against the day's grind. As you work, you overhear gossip. The Lord's planning a banquet for some visiting knight. The lady's new gown cost more than your yearly wages, which, to be fair, are mostly paid in porridge. And here's the kicker. Someone swears they saw a ghost in the North Tower. You roll your eyes. Ghosts? You're too busy dodging Agnes's ladle to worry about spectres. The kitchen's heat hits you like a wall as you lug the water bucket inside. Agnes, the cook, is a whirlwind in human form, stirring a cauldron with one hand while scolding a scullion with the other. "Peel those turnips faster," she snaps, though you're not sure who she's addressing. Your task shifts now. You're on bread duty, kneading dough that's stickier than a courtier's flattery. The flour dusts your arms, turning you ghostly, and you push your weight into the dough, its resistance a mirror of your own. The kitchen's a tapestry of sounds. The fire's crackle, a knife's rhythmic chop, a pot's clatter as it's shoved aside. You notice a new scullion, a girl no older than 12, struggling with a sack of peas. You pause to help, showing her how to split the pods without losing half to the floor. Her shy thank you is a rare coin in this chaos, and you tuck it away like a treasure. Agnes catches you, her eyes narrowing, but she says nothing. High praise coming from her. You overhear more gossip. The visiting knight's horse threw a shoe, the steward's hoarding candles, and someone swears the North Tower's ghost rattled a chain last night. You snort softly. Chains? More likely a loose bucket in the well. The dough's ready now, shaped into rough loaves, and you slide them toward the oven, your hands dusted white. The kitchen's frenzy is your rhythm, and you move with it, a silent partner in this endless dance of sustenance. Mid-morning, you're sent to the great hall to sweep. The hall's massive, with soaring beams and tapestries that depict battles nobody remembers. The floor's strewn with rushes, dried herbs, and straw meant to soak up spills. It's a nice idea, but mostly they hide bones, ale stains, and the occasional mouse. You sweep, the rushes crackling under your broom, and wonder who thought this was a good flooring choice. The hall's quiet now, but tonight it'll roar with laughter, music, and the clink of goblets. You won't see it, you'll be in the kitchen, scrubbing, but you can imagine it. The lord at the high table, the ladies smiling politely, the knights boasting about tournaments, and you, invisible, making it all possible. There's a strange pride in that, like being the shadow behind a candle's glow. As you sweep, you notice a carved wooden chair, its arms worn smooth by generations of lords. You're tempted to sit, just for a second, to feel what it's like to be someone who matters. But you don't. The last servant who tried was flogged, and you're fond of your back's current state. A page boy darts in, announcing the lord's hunting party is returning early. Great. That means lunch is now a crisis. You head back to the kitchen, where Agnes is already yelling about venison and not enough hands. You sigh. History might call this the age of chivalry, but you're pretty sure it's the age of too many onions. Sweeping the great hall feels like taming a beast, the rushes fighting your broom with every stroke. The air's thick with the scent of old ale and wax, and you notice a forgotten spoon wedged between two floorboards. You pry it free, its handle worn smooth, and wonder how many mouths it's fed, how many hands like yours have polished it. Tucking it into your belt, you keep sweeping, the task as endless as the castle's appetites. The hall's walls are alive with tapestries, their colours muted in the morning light. You pause by one depicting a feast, noticing a servant in the corner balancing a jug. You smirk. Someone remembered you, or at least your shadow. The high table looms nearby, its oak scarred from years of feasts. You're tempted to trace the marks, to feel the history under your fingers, but you don't. The steward's eyes are everywhere, and you've no taste for trouble. A sudden clatter startles you. A page boy tripping over a bench scatters a tray of cups. You help him gather them, his face red with embarrassment. "Won't tell," you whisper, and he flashes a grateful grin. The hunting party's early return means the hall's about to fill, and you quicken your pace, the brooms swish a quiet protest. You're the stagehand for this grand performance, and though the curtain's rising, you'll be gone before the applause. Lunch is a blur. You're carrying platters to the great hall, dodging dogs and children underfoot. The lord's table groans with food, roasted venison, bread so white it's practically aristocratic, and a pie that took 3 cooks and a small miracle to make. You set down a trencher, a shared wooden plate, and catch the lord's eye. He doesn't see you, not really. Your furniture, moving scenery. The irony hits you. This feast is a performance, a display of wealth, yet half the village outside the castle walls is eating turnips. You wonder if anyone notices the gap between the songs of plenty and the reality of hunger. Probably not. The minstrel's strumming a tune about love, and nobody's listening to the grumbling stomachs beyond the gate. You're back in the kitchen before you can dwell on it. Your lunch is a heel of bread and a sip of ale. Thin, sour, but better than nothing. You eat standing, leaning against a wall, while Agnes lectures about the banquet preparations. "No mistakes tonight," she says, as if you're personally responsible for the universe's whims. A moment of quiet sneaks in, and you close your eyes. The castle's hum surrounds you. Distant clatter, a horse's whinny, the wind rattling a shutter. You're tired, but there's a rhythm to this life, a pulse you're part of. It's not glamorous, but it's yours. The great hall hums with lunch's chaos as you carry a tray of steaming capon. The crowd parts for you, but not out of respect. More like you're a cart horse, expected but unremarkable. The lord's table is a fortress of abundance. Trenchers piled with meat, bread so white it glows, and a sauce that smells of cloves and wealth. You place your tray carefully, avoiding a noble's elbow, and slip away before anyone can complain about the arrangement. As you retreat, you notice the lady's new gown, its embroidery catching the light. It's beautiful, but you can't help calculating its cost in terms of your wages. Years of porridge and sore hands. The thought's not bitter. just clear, like the stream you rarely see beyond the castle walls. You wonder what it's like to wear something that doesn't itch, to sit instead of serve. The minstrel's song, All Love and Valour, drowns out your musings, and you head back to the kitchen. Your own lunch waits there, a chunk of rye bread, hard as a cobble, and a sip of ale that's more water than flavour. You chew slowly, sitting on a stool by the fire, its warmth a small mercy. A scullion drops a spoon, and you pick it up, handing it back with a nod. The kitchen's a community, bound by shared exhaustion, and these small acts are its glue. You finish eating, the banquet's demands already pulling you back into the fray. Afternoon brings a new task. You're sent to the buttery, not a place for butter, confusingly, but for ale and wine. The butler, a dour man named Thomas, hands you a list of casks to check. The buttery's cool, dark, and smells like yeast and oak. You tap a cask, checking its level, and wonder why nobody's invented a better system. Medieval innovation, you decide, is mostly about sharper swords, not smarter storage. Next, you're off to the laundry, a steamy corner of the castle where women pound linens in vats of lye. The air's thick, your hands sting just being near the water, and you're grateful your job is only to deliver firewood. The laundress, Joan, jokes about the Lord's stained tablecloth. Blood, wine, or gravy? She asks, grinning. You laugh, a rare moment of lightness. On your way back, you pass the chapel. The priest's chanting drifts out, low and steady. You're supposed to attend services, but there's always work. You say a quick prayer under your breath, less for your soul, more for surviving Agnes's temper. Faith is fine, but a good spoon's more immediate. The buttery's cool darkness is a relief after the kitchen's heat. You're checking casks, but now Thomas tasks you with fetching a specific wine for the banquet. A red from Bordeaux, he says, like you're supposed to know what that means. You squint at the labels, their faded scratches barely legible, and find the right one by smell more than sight. The cork's stubborn, but you ease it out, the wine's sharp tang filling the air. You wonder if it tastes as good as it smells, then laugh. You'll never know. Next, you're sent to the garden to gather herbs for the evening's sauces. The castle's herb patch is a small square of order, its rows of sage and mint a contrast to the courtyard's chaos. You kneel, plucking leaves, their scent clinging to your fingers. A bee hums nearby, and you freeze, not keen on a sting. It moves on, and you exhale, grateful for small mercies. The gardener, an old man with hands like tree bark, nods at you, his silence a kind of approval. Back inside, you pass the armoury, where a squire polishes a sword with more care than you've ever seen anyone give a spoon. You're tempted to linger, to watch the metal gleam, but you don't. The castle's clock is relentless, and you're due in the kitchen. The herbs in your basket are a green promise, a reminder that even in this stone world, something grows. Evening creeps in, and the castle's gearing up for the banquet. You're back in the kitchen, where the air's thick with heat and panic. A pig's roasting, its fat spitting in the fire. Sauces simmer, bread's baking, and someone's shouting about a broken sieve. Your job is to plate the food, carefully, because the Lord's guest is picky and nobody wants a smudged presentation. You carry a tray to the great hall, now transformed. Torches blaze, the tapestries seem alive, and the tables are packed with nobles. A juggler tosses apples, a minstrel sings, and the Lord's greyhounds weave through the crowd, hoping for scraps. You set down your tray, unnoticed, and slip away. The irony's sharp. This splendour rests on your sore feet and blistered hands. Back in the kitchen, you're scrubbing again. Pots, knives, spoons, endless. The scullion boy's asleep in a corner, and you envy him. Your hands are raw, your back's staging a coup, but you keep going. The castle doesn't care about your complaints. It's a hungry beast and you're feeding it. The kitchen's a storm now, the banquet's demands pushing everyone to their limits. You're tasked with garnishing plates, sprinkling parsley with a precision that feels absurdly ceremonial. The pig's roasted to perfection, its aroma almost cruel in its richness. You arrange slices on a platter, careful not to smudge the sauce, and wonder who decided parsley makes food noble. Probably someone who never had to chop it. In the great hall, the banquet's in full swing, a riot of colour and noise. You carry another tray, dodging a juggler who's more enthusiastic than skilled. The nobles don't see you, their eyes on each other or the food, but you notice them. A knight's loud laugh, the lady's delicate sip, a child sneaking a tart. You set down your tray and retreat, the hall's warmth lingering on your skin as you return to the kitchen's heat. Scrubbing resumes, your hands plunging into water that's gone tepid. A pot's crusted with sauce, and you attack it with a rag, your arms burning. You glance at the scullion boy, now awake and stirring a pot, his eyes half closed. You toss him a cloth, a silent gesture of camaraderie. The kitchen's a battlefield, but you're all soldiers here, fighting hunger with spoons and sweat. The thought keeps you moving, even as your body begs for rest. The banquet's over, the guests gone. You're sent to the great hall one last time to clear the wreckage. The rushes are trampled, the table's sticky, and a dog's gnawing on a discarded bone. You sweep, your movements slow, your eyelids heavy. The castle's quiet now, a giant settling into sleep. You're back to the dormitory, the straw mattress waiting like an old friend. You lie down, the day's aches settling in. Somewhere a shutter creaks and the wind hums a lullaby. You think of the day, the onions, the rushes, the lord's fleeting glance. It's not a saga, not a life of glory, but it's yours, woven into the threads of this stone fortress. As you drift off, you wonder what tomorrow holds. More water, more pottage, more invisible work. But there's comfort in the rhythm, in knowing you're the heartbeat of this castle's life. History won't remember you, but the walls do. And maybe that's enough. The great hall's aftermath is a quiet ruin, its tables strewn with scraps and stains. You're sweeping again. The rush is now a soggy puzzle of bones and spilled wine. A candle's burned down to a stub, its wax pooling on a bench. You scrape it off, your knife scraping softly, and wonder how many candles this castle devours, how many hands like yours keep them lit. You find a child's toy, a wooden horse tucked under a table. You pocket it, intending to return it to the nursery tomorrow. It's a small thing, but you know the tears it'll prevent. The hall's silence is heavy now, broken only by the dog's contented chewing. You envy its simplicity, its freedom to sleep without a steward's orders. You finish sweeping, the pile of rushes a testament to your unseen work. As you head to the dormitory, you pass a window, its leaded panes catching the moonlight. You pause, the night's quiet a rare gift. The castle's asleep, its demands paused, and you feel a flicker of peace. Your palate waits, its straw a promise of rest, however brief. You lie down, the day's aches settling like dust, and let the castle's heartbeat lull you towards sleep. Your eyes flutter, sleep tugging at you, but the dormitory's quiet is broken by a soft shuffle. It's Marjorie, the older servant who sleeps near the door, whispering your name. "Up, Edith," she says, her voice low but firm. "The steward needs someone to check the cellars." You stifle a groan. The castle never truly sleeps, and neither it seems do you. You rise, your body protesting, and pull your tunic tighter against the chill. Marjorie hands you a tallow candle, its flame flickering like it's as tired as you are. The wax smells faintly of sheep, a reminder of the flock that keeps this place fed and clothed. You nod thanks and step into the corridor, where shadows dance on the stone walls. The castle at midnight feels different. Less a fortress, more a living thing, breathing secrets. The cellar stairs are narrow, worn smooth by centuries of feet. You descend carefully, the candle's light barely pushing back the dark. The air grows damp, heavy with the scent of earth and ale. Your task is simple. Check the stores, make sure no barrels have sprung leaks, no rats have gotten bold. But in the quiet, your mind wanders. You wonder if the Lord ever thinks about the cellars, or if he assumes his wine just appears. You find the barrels, their oak staves cool under your fingers. You tap one, listening for the hollow sound of a leak. All's well, but you linger, tracing the grain of the wood. There's something grounding about this moment, alone with the castle's hidden heart. You're not just a servant here, you're a keeper of its pulse, even if no one says so. A scuttle in the corner makes you jump. A rat, probably, or maybe that ghost everyone's whispering about. You smile to yourself. If ghosts exist, they're probably as overworked as you, haunting the kitchens for lost spoons. You mark the inventory on a wax tablet, your scratches barely legible in the dim light, and head back upstairs. The castle's too practical for spirits, you decide. Its real magic is in the endless grind that keeps it standing. Your candle's flame wavers as you climb back from the cellar, the wax dripping onto your fingers, a tiny burn you barely notice anymore. Marjorie's gone back to her pallet, her snores a soft rhythm in the dormitory's hush. You pause in the corridor, the stone walls cool against your shoulder. The castle's alive even now, its creaks and groans like a conversation you're only half privy to. You wonder, not for the first time, if these walls ever tire of holding up the weight of so many lives. The steward's orders echo in your mind. Check the cellars, yes, but also ensure the grain sacks are tied tight. You head back down, the stairs seeming steeper now, your legs heavy with the day's work. The grain sacks are piled in a corner, their burlap rough under your hands. You tug the ropes, testing knots, and find one loose, sloppy work from the morning shift. You retie it, your fingers deft despite their ache. A small victory, but in this life, you take what you can get. As you work, you hear a distant clatter, probably the kitchen cat knocking over a ladle again. You smile, picturing Agnes's face at dawn when she finds it. The cellar's quiet otherwise, but it's not empty. You spot a spider weaving its web between two barrels, its delicate threads catching the candlelight. You leave it be. Spiders eat the pests that threaten the stores, making them better allies than half the castle's guards. You finish your checks and climb back to the dormitory, the wax tablet tucked under your arm. The air's colder now, the night settling deep into the stones. You think of the Lord, asleep in his feather bed, oblivious to the rats and spiders you've just outwitted. There's a strange satisfaction in that, in knowing the castle's secrets better than he ever will. You slip back to your straw mattress, but the steward's shadow looms again, his voice cutting through the dark with one more task. Back in the dormitory, you're not done yet. The steward, a man with a face like a tax ledger, catches you in the hall. "One more thing," he says as if it's a favour. "Bank the fires in the hall." You nod because arguing with the steward is like arguing with a stone wall, pointless and bruising. The great hall's empty now, a far cry from the banquet's clamour. The torches are out, the tables bare, and the air smells of cooled grease and spilled wine. You kneel by the hearth, where embers glow like tiny suns. Your job is to rake them, cover them with ash to keep them alive until morning. Too much air, and they'll flare. Too little, and they'll die. It's a delicate dance, one you've learned through scorched fingers and cold mornings. As you work, the hall's silence wraps around you. You notice details you missed earlier. A scratch on a bench, a frayed edge on a tapestry. These are the castle's scars, proof of lives lived here, meals shared, fights forgotten. You wonder about the servants who banked this fire before you, their names lost to time. Did they too feel this quiet pride in keeping the warmth alive? A log shifts, sending up a spark. You watch it fade, a fleeting star in the dark. The irony strikes you. The Lord's power rests on these embers, on your careful hands. He'll wake to a warm hall, never knowing your name. You don't mind, not really. There's a kind of freedom in being unseen, in doing work that matters without fanfare. You finish, brushing ash from your hands, and stand. The hall feels softer now, ready to rest. You're ready too, but the castle always has one more trick up its sleeve. The great hall's hearth is your next battleground, its embers glowing like a dragon's hoard in miniature. You kneel, the stone floor biting into your knees, and rake the coals with a care that feels almost sacred. The ash is soft, powdery, clinging to your hands like a second skin. You layer it over the embers, coaxing them into a slumber that'll last till dawn. Too much ash and the fire dies. Too little and you'll be blamed for a blaze. It's a balance you've learned through trial and too many singed tunics. You sit back on your heels, watching the embers pulse. The hall's vastness feels intimate now, its grandeur softened by the dark. You notice a goblet left on a table, its rim stained with wine. You could leave it, someone else's job technically, but you don't. You tuck it under your arm, a small act of order in a world that thrives on chaos. The castle's like that, 1,000 tiny tasks, each one a thread in its tapestry. Your mind drifts to the stories you've heard, tales of knights and quests, sung by minstrels who never mention servants. You wonder what your story would sound like. Edith, the keeper of embers? Edward, vanquisher of rats? You chuckle, the sound swallowed by the hall's silence. Maybe your tale's not for singing, but it's real, etched in the ash and the ache of your hands. You stand, brushing off your knees, and take one last look at the hearth. The embers glow steady, a promise kept. You turn to leave, the goblet still under your arm, when a shadow moves at the hall's edge. Your heart skips, but it's no ghost, just the Lord's Son, stepping into the light. As you turn to leave, a figure slips into the hall. It's the Lord's youngest son, a boy of maybe 12, all gangly limbs and wide eyes. You freeze, unsure if you should bow or vanish. He's not supposed to be here, not at this hour, but then neither are you, really. Don't go, he whispers, clutching a candle of his own. I heard something. You raise an eyebrow. The ghost again? But his face is pale and you soften. Even Lord's sons get spooked, it seems. You gesture to a bench and he sits, his candle dripping wax onto the wood. You'll have to clean that tomorrow, but for now, you listen. He talks in a rush. Something about a noise in his chamber, a shadow on the wall. You nod, keeping your voice low and steady. Probably the wind, you say, or a shutter loose. You don't believe in ghosts, but you know fear's real enough. You tell him about the cellar rat, exaggerating its size just enough to make him laugh. His shoulders ease, and you realize he's just a boy, not so different from the scullion in the kitchen. You offer to check his chamber, though you're no knight-errant. He follows you, staying close as you climb the spiral stairs to the family quarters. The room's empty, of course. Just a bed with heavy curtains, a chest, a window rattling in the wind. You secure it, feeling oddly heroic for wrestling a hinge. All safe, you say, and he grins, sheepish now. Back in the hall he hesitates. You won't tell? He asks. You shake your head. My secret, you say, echoing your earlier promise. He slips away, and you're alone again. The hall's quiet deeper now, satisfied. The boy's candle casts long shadows, making him look smaller, more fragile than the Lord's son ought to. His eyes are wide, searching the hall as if it might hide monsters. "I heard it again," he says, voice barely above a whisper. You set the goblet down, careful not to clatter, and kneel to his level. "Tell me," you say, keeping your tone as steady as the hearth's embers. He describes the noise, a scratching, a low moan from his chamber's walls. You nod, hiding a smile. The castle's old bones are full of such sounds, wind in the chimneys, mice in the rafters. But to a boy raised on tales of spectres and sieges, every creak is a story. You offer to check again, and he trails you like a shadow, his candle trembling. The stairs to his chamber are narrow, the stone walls brushing your shoulders. You climb slowly, letting him keep pace. His chamber's as you left it, the bed's curtains heavy, the window now secure. You make a show of checking corners, tapping walls, even peering under the bed. "Nothing here but dust," you say, and he laughs, a nervous sound that loosens the room's tension. You sit with him a moment, on the edge of his bed, and tell a story of your own, not of ghosts, but of the kitchen cat who once stole a whole fish and led Agnes on a chase through the courtyard. He giggles, his fear fading. You realise he's not so different from you, just another soul navigating this castle's endless demands. "You're brave for checking," he says, and you shrug, warmth spreading in your chest. And so, our story ends, gentle listener. The castle sleeps, and so should you. If you liked this tale of forgotten lives and quiet resilience, maybe come back for another night. Like subscribe, but only if it feels right. For now, let the candles burn low, let the fan hum softly, and drift off into your own quiet dreams. Good night. Tonight we begin with a soft step into a world where time moves like honey, slow and deliberate, where the air hums with the scratch of quills, the faint toll of a bell, and the earthy scent of herbs tended by calloused hands. It's the year 1086, and you're not wielding a sword in some muddy battlefield or haggling over turnips in a noisy market. No, you're about to live a day in a medieval monastery, a place where silence is a language, and the most thrilling event might be a goat nibbling the wrong patch of lavender. Isn't it oddly charming, almost absurd, that in an age of clashing knights and scheming kings, some chose a life so orderly it makes your daily to-do list look like a drunken scribble? If this kind of story feels like a warm blanket for your mind, maybe like and subscribe, but only if you're inclined. No hurry. Now, dim the lights, perhaps turn on a fan for that gentle hum, and nestle into a cozy corner. You're about to slip into the worn sandals of a monk, living a life of quiet purpose within stone walls that have stood for centuries. Let's begin, slowly, as the monastery stirs from its slumber. You wake in a small Benedictine monastery, tucked into the rolling hills of Northumbria, where the wind carries whispers of salt from a distant sea. It's not a place of grandeur, no tapestries or silver goblets, just sturdy stone walls and the faint glow of a world not yet awake. Your bed is a straw mattress, thin and crackly, tucked in a dormitory that smells of wool, damp stone, and the lingering ghost of last night's barley soup. The air is chilly, even in late spring, and you pull your coarse woolen habit tighter, wishing for a moment that someone had thought to invent a proper blanket, or at least a thicker one. It's 3 a.m., or close enough. A bell tolls, its low, mournful clang slicing through the fog of sleep. This is Matins, the first of 7 daily prayer services, because apparently God keeps a schedule tighter than a tax collector's ledger. You rise, your bare feet meeting the cold stone floor, each step a small shock that jolts you awake. You shuffle through a dark corridor with the other monks, guided by a single candle's flicker. The flame dances, casting shadows that twist like silent spirits, and you wonder, half dozing, if it's trying to tell you something profound. Probably not. It's just a candle, and you're just tired. In the chapel, you join your brothers in a semicircle, your breath visible in the chill. The psalms begin, chanted in Latin, a language you've memorized through years of repetition, though you're no scholar. Your voice blends with the others, a low rhythmic hum that feels like it could hold the world together. The words are ancient, penned by a king who never imagined his poetry would echo in a drafty chapel centuries later. You try to focus, but your mind wanders to a mouse you saw last week, darting across the altar like it was late for a meeting with the sacristan. Monastic life, where even the rodents seem to have a purpose. You're back in bed by 4 a.m., stealing a few more hours of sleep. The straw pokes through the thin cloth, and you shift, searching for a spot that doesn't feel like a penance. You chose this life. No one dragged you here kicking and screaming. You could have been a farmer, wrestling pigs in the mud, or a peddler dodging bandits on the road. Instead, you're here, where the biggest scandal is Brother Anselm forgetting to clean the inkpots or sneaking an extra slice of cheese. As you drift off, you wonder if the mouse made it to its meeting, or if it's still scurrying through the chapel, chasing its own quiet rebellion. The bell rings again at dawn. Lauds, the prayer that greets the sun. You rise, rubbing sleep from your eyes, and catch a glimpse of the sky through a narrow window slit. It's painted in soft pinks and golds, like someone spilled a chalice of watered-down wine across the heavens. The monastery is waking now, a quiet symphony of footsteps, muffled coughs, and the creak of wooden benches. You splash your face with water from a stone basin, the cold biting your skin like a stern reminder to stay awake. You wince, wondering why nobody's invented a way to warm the water, but then, comfort isn't the point here. In the chapel, the chants are brighter, or perhaps it's the light streaming through the stained glass, casting patches of red and blue on the worn stone floor. You're no troubadour. Your voice cracks on the high notes, and you're fairly sure you're slightly off-key. But the rhythm of the psalms is soothing, like a river flowing over smooth stones. Brother Gregory, who's been here since some long-dead king sat on the throne, is nodding off again, his head bobbing like a buoy in a storm. You suppress a chuckle, because laughter in the chapel is frowned upon, though you suspect God might appreciate the humour. In a place where silence is a virtue, falling asleep during prayers is the closest thing to defiance. After Lauds, you head to the lavatorium to wash your hands. The abbot insists on cleanliness, quoting scripture about purity, but you're pretty sure he just enjoys watching everyone shiver under the icy water. Breakfast follows, and it's as lavish as you'd expect from a monastery. A chunk of coarse bread, gritty enough to remind you of your humility. A sliver of hard cheese if the stores are generous, and a mug of weak ale. The ale's safer than water. Rivers around here carry more surprises than a peddler's cart, and not the good kind. You chew slowly, the bread's texture catching in your teeth, and wonder what the nobles are eating. Roasted pheasant? Spiced wine? Things you'll never taste, and that's fine. Simplicity is the point, or so you tell yourself as you take another sip of ale that tastes faintly of regret. By 7 a.m., you're in the scriptorium, the monastery's intellectual heart. It's a room of slanted desks, inkwells, and the faint leathery scent of vellum, calfskin scraped and stretched until it's smoother than a noble's flattery. Today, you're copying Saint. Augustine's Confessions, a text so dense it feels like wrestling a theological ox. You dip your quill, careful not to drip ink, and begin. The Latin flows, or at least it tries to. Your handwriting's passable, neat enough to avoid a scolding from the scriptorium master, but you're no illuminator. Those monks, the lucky ones, get to paint golden vines, tiny saints, and the occasional dragon in the margins. You're just transcribing, line after line, your fingers cramping by the 10th page, your eyes squinting in the dim light. The scriptorium is silent, save for the scratch of quills, the occasional sigh, and the faint creak of a stool. Silence is the rule, but it's never absolute. There's always a rustle of parchment, a cough, or Brother Thomas muttering about a smudged letter like it's a personal affront. You glance at the window, where a bee buzzes against the glass, trapped and frantic. You know the feeling, though you'd never admit it. The monotony can weigh on you, but you push it aside. This work matters. These books will outlive you, maybe by 1,000 years. Some scholar in a far-off future, say the year 2025, might read your copy and think, decent work, or they'll curse your uneven lines and the ink blotch on page 47. Either way, you're part of something eternal, a chain of knowledge that stretches across centuries. Around noon, it's sext, another prayer service. The Psalms again, always the Psalms. You wonder, in a fleeting moment of irreverence, if God ever tires of hearing the same verses, day after day. Probably not. He's got eternity to kill. Back in the scriptorium, you notice Brother Anselm's desk is empty. Word has it he's in the infirmary, felled by a stomachache from sneaking extra cheese at breakfast. Monks aren't supposed to indulge, but cheese is the monastery's forbidden fruit, a temptation even the holiest can't always resist. You smirk, then refocus, dipping your quill. The bee's still at the window, buzzing with less enthusiasm now, as if it's resigned to its fate. You hope it finds its way out, but you're not optimistic. After sext, you're sent to the herb garden, where the monastery grows its food and medicine. Self-sufficiency is the rule. Nobody's running to the nearest village for a bundle of sage or a sack of leeks. You're weeding today, tugging stubborn dandelions from the soil while bees hum around you, oblivious to their trapped cousin in the scriptorium. The garden's a peaceful place, with neat rows of lavender, thyme, and something called wormwood that sounds like it belongs in a bard's tale or a witch's brew. You're no herbalist, but you know enough to avoid nibbling the wrong leaves. Last year, Brother William decided to taste the garden and spent a week in the infirmary, pale as a ghost and swearing he'd seen visions of Saint Benedict himself. You're not sure if it was the wormwood or his own guilt, but you're not taking chances. The sun's high now, warming your back through your habit, and for a moment you feel content. The world's troubles, wars, plagues, tax collectors, can't touch you here. This is why you stay. These quiet moments when God feels close, and the world feels small, manageable, like a well-tended row of herbs. Then a goat wanders in, munching the mint with a glee that feels almost sinful, and you spend the next half hour herding it back to the pasture. You're no shepherd, and the goat knows it, eyeing you with a smugness that's distinctly unmonastic. You sigh, brushing dirt from your hands, and head to dinner. The midday meal, served at 2 p.m, is the day's main event, though event might be generous. It's vegetable stew, thick with barley, carrots, and the occasional turnip, another hunk of gritty bread, and a tart apple that makes your lips pucker like you've bitten into a lemon. The refectory is quiet, save for the reader, a monk reciting Ecclesiastes while you eat. All is vanity, he intones, his voice a steady drone, and you glance at Brother Gregory, who's sneaking an extra spoonful of a stew when he thinks the abbot isn't looking. Vanity indeed. You chew slowly, savouring the warmth, and wonder about the goat. Did it tell its friends about the mint, or is it grazing alone, plotting its next raid? After dinner, you're assigned to the brewery, where the monastery makes its ale. It's not a tavern, no one's toasting or singing bawdy songs. But ale's a staple, safer than water, and easier to store than milk. You stir a vat of barley mash, the steam rising like a dragon's breath, and check the fermentation. The recipe's ancient, older than the stone walls around you, passed down through generations of monks who probably also grumbled about the smell. You're good at this, though. There's a rhythm to it, a kind of alchemy that feels almost holy, transforming grain and water into something that sustains the community. You're not drinking for pleasure, monks don't do that, but you appreciate the craft, the way each batch carries a hint of the past. By 4 p.m, it's none, another prayer service. The chapel's warm now, the afternoon sun slanting through the windows, painting the floor in soft colours like a painter who forgot to finish the canvas. You're tired, your hands sticky with malt, and the psalms blend into a familiar drone. You catch yourself wondering about the goat again. Did it find its way back to the pasture, or is it still scheming? Focus, you tell yourself. God's listening, or at least the abbot is, and he's got a sharp eye for daydreamers. You stand straighter, mouthing the words, though your mind's half in the brewery, half in the pasture. The rest of the afternoon is yours, or as yours as it gets in a monastery. You walk the cloister, a square courtyard framed by stone arches, and let your mind wander. Before you took your vows, you were a farmer's son, destined for a life of ploughing fields and praying for rain that never came. Here at least the work feels eternal. Books, ale, herbs, all part of something bigger than a single harvest. Still, you miss your mother's bread, warm and soft, not this gritty loaf that feels like a test of endurance. You shake off the thought. Nostalgia's a luxury monks can't afford, like spices or a bed that doesn't creak. As evening falls, it's time for vespers. The chapel's lit by candles now, their flames flickering like tiny beacons in the gathering dark. The chants are slower, more reflective, and you feel the day's weight settling into your bones. You're young, maybe 25, but monastic life ages you in odd ways. Your knees ache from kneeling, your fingers are stained with ink and malt, and you're pretty sure you've forgotten how to laugh without sounding like a startled goose. The psalms wrap around you like a blanket, their rhythm steady and sure, and for a moment you feel at peace. Supper's light, more bread, a handful of dried figs, and a cup of water that tastes faintly of the stone well it came from. The refectory's quieter now, the reader droning on about Job's trials. You sympathise with Job, but at least he didn't have to listen to Brother Thomas's snoring, which you're certain could wake the dead. You finish eating and head to the chapter house for the daily meeting. The abbot reads from the rule of St. Benedict, urging humility, obedience, and silence. You nod, but your mind's on the goat. You hope it's safe, munching grass somewhere peaceful, not plotting another mint heist. The final prayer, Compline, comes at dusk. The chapel's dark, save for a few candles, their light pooling like liquid gold. The chants feel like a lullaby, wrapping you in calm, and you sing of rest, of God's protection through the night. For a moment, you believe it completely. The world outside, kings, wars, famine, feels distant, irrelevant. Here it's just you, your brothers, and the rhythm of this life, steady as a heartbeat. After Compline, the great silence begins. No speaking until morning. You shuffle to the dormitory, your footsteps echoing in the quiet, and settle onto your straw mattress. The ceiling's familiar now. Its cracks like a map of your thoughts. You think about the day. Prayers, quills, goats, ale. It's ordinary, repetitive, but there's a beauty in it, a purpose that carries you. You're part of something that will outlast you, something that's been here for centuries and will be here long after you're gone. As you drift into sleep, let's linger on the monastery's rhythm, because that's what holds this life together. Days here aren't marked by grand events. No battles won, no treasures unearthed. Instead, it's the small things, The weight of a quill in your hand, the smell of barley in the brewery, the soft clatter of plates in the refectory. You've learned to find meaning in repetition, in the way each prayer, each task, builds something larger than yourself. You think of your brothers, the monks who share this life. There's Brother Gregory, who's been here so long he claims to remember when the chapel's roof didn't leak. A bold claim, since it's leaked for decades. There's Brother Anselm, recovering from his cheese-induced penance, probably dreaming of softer beds and milder flavours. And Brother Thomas, whose muttering in the scriptorium is as reliable as the bell, a constant undercurrent of complaints about ink and parchment. They're not perfect, nobody is, but they're your family, bound by vows and shared silences, by the rhythm of this strange, quiet life. You dream of the garden, of the goat that wandered in, and wonder if it's still out there, grazing under the stars. You dream of the books you've copied, their pages travelling to distant lands, read by people you'll never meet. You dream of the ale, bubbling in its vats, and the psalms, rising like smoke to the heavens. It's a simple dream, but it's yours, and it's enough. In your sleep, your mind drifts to the world beyond the walls. The monastery isn't an island, not really. It's tied to the land, to the villagers who bring grain and wool in exchange for prayers, to the lords who donate land in hopes of buying a spot in heaven. You've heard stories of the outside, tales of wars, of kings crowned and deposed, of plagues that sweep through towns like divine judgment. Here those stories feel like whispers, half heard and easily ignored, like the wind rattling the chapel windows. But the monastery has its role. The books you copy will teach priests and scholars, preserving knowledge through a world that seems determined to forget. The ale you brew will feed the poor who come to the gate, their faces lined with hunger and hope. The herbs you grow will heal the sick, or at least ease their pain, offering a small mercy in a world that's often merciless. You're not changing the world, not in the way a king or a knight might, but you're holding it together. One quill stroke, one prayer, one weed pulled at a time. You think of the pilgrims who visit, weary travellers seeking blessings or miracles. You've seen them in the chapel, kneeling on the cold stone, their eyes bright with hope or clouded with despair. You don't have answers for them, nobody does, but you offer what you can, a bowl of stew, a prayer, a moment of peace. It's not much, but it's enough to keep them going, to send them back into the world a little lighter. As the night deepens, your sleep grows heavier, and the monastery fades into a soft blur. You're no longer just a monk in 1086, you're part of a chain, a tradition that stretches back to Benedict and forward to a future you can't imagine. The bells will ring tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. The psalms will be sung, the books copied, the herbs tended. The goat might wander again, and Brother Gregory will probably doze off mid-prayer, his snores blending with the chants. This is the monastery's gift, the eternal now. Each day mirrors the last, yet each is new. You're not chasing glory or wealth, you're chasing something quieter, something that feels like truth. You don't always understand it, but you feel it in the rhythm of the hours, in the weight of the quill, in the warmth of the sun on your back. It's a life of small moments, woven together into something vast, something that endures. In the stillness of the night, as you lie on your straw mattress, you reflect on what this life means. It's not about fame or fortune. Those are for knights and merchants, for people who measure their days in coin or conquest. Here, success is quieter. A page copied without error, a row of herbs free of weeds, a prayer sung without faltering. You've learned to find joy in these things, to see the divine in the mundane. The world outside might chase fleeting pleasures, but you found something steadier, something that anchors you. you think of the other monks, each with their quirks and quiet struggles. There's Brother William, who still tells the story of his wormwood misadventure, embellishing it with each retelling until it sounds like he wrestled a demon. There's Brother Stephen, the novice who's still learning the Psalms and blushes every time he stumbles over a Latin phrase. And there's the abbot, stern but kind, who watches over you all like a shepherd with a particularly stubborn flock. They're your brothers, your companions in this strange, silent life, and you wouldn't trade them, not even for a softer bed. As you drift deeper into sleep, you imagine the monastery's future. These walls will stand long after you're gone, sheltering generations of monks who will sing the same psalms, copy the same books, tend the same herbs. The world will change, kings will fall, empires will rise, and maybe someone will finally invent socks, but the monastery will endure, a quiet constant in a chaotic world. Your work, your prayers, your small acts of devotion will ripple forward, touching lives you'll never know. You think of the books in the scriptorium, their pages filled with your careful script. They'll travel to other monasteries, to cathedrals, to scholars who will pore over them by candlelight. They'll carry your mistakes too, the ink blotch on page 47, the slightly crooked line on page 82, but that's part of it. Perfection isn't the goal. Faithfulness is. You've done your part, and that's enough. And so, you've lived a day in a medieval monastery, a world of bells and books, of silence and small triumphs. It's not a life for everyone. Most would balk at the endless prayers, the gritty bread, the lack of anything resembling excitement. But for you, in this moment, it's home. Sleep well, listener. Let the monastery's rhythm carry you. Let the bells sing you to rest. Maybe you'll dream of goats and quills, of ale and psalms, or maybe you'll just drift, held by the quiet beauty of a life long past.